I'm Mike Connors, and this is How It Ticks. Let's pick up right where we left off with Alex Murray. For better or for worse, we live in a world where it's now normal to change job every 2 years. Can you describe the process of creating a personal brand that really runs across multiple jobs, even if those jobs aren't necessarily linked to each other?
Sure. So I think that a personal brand, first of all, needs to integrate some marketing thinking. Marketing thinking, because we need to understand the market we want to play in. And the job market is evolving. And as we said before, there are multiple career paths you can take. And eventually you are going to develop a career portfolio. So besides understanding who you are, so internally and externally, where are you playing the market? So this phase you can call reflecting. Then you have to define where the opportunities lie and trying to experiment. So experimentation is an important aspect of it. So you cannot jump into a remote working career without understanding exactly your lifestyle. There is always a constant evolution. And so you have to optimize your brand over time. And whenever you are successful, you can be ready to the next stage, which is personal brand portfolio extension. So you have more projects. You can basically diversify your branding effort. Very classic is the example of Mark Zuckerberg these days. So he had this big scandal with Cambridge Analytica. He basically was under the radar, testifying in front of the Congress. And so he basically had to change, becoming an increasingly what is called techie bro. So someone that eventually went from wearing gray t-shirt and hoodies to designer brands, someone that is focusing on fitness, particularly martial arts, that is carefully creating social media posts very professionally. And so he has repositioned himself completely. And this is a required process sometimes. So going back to the question of what is changing in the marketplace. So as we said, you have an internal view of yourself, an external view of the market, and then you have to identify opportunities. So where is the intersection of these? And of course, for younger individuals, it is very important to explain how are things changing. So from a linear career path to a multi-stage life. So the idea is you are not studying and then working for 40 years and retiring. When I ask my students, do you see yourself working in the same company for 40 years? They, of course, say absolutely not. And the incoming CEO of Nike, for example, he has been in the same company for 32 years, and he started from being an assistant in the shop. This is going to be more and more rare. So now a career is multi-stage, and you finish your education, find employment in a big company, then you have your startup, then you take a sabbatical, maybe you do volunteering job, then you study a bit more, take a PhD, go back in a big company. So what used to be predictable, linear, and programmed is now unpredictable, unlinear, and unprogrammed. And what does it mean practically? It means that we need to be fully in control of our career. So career is not a responsibility of the university or the manager or I don't know who. To succeed, you need to cultivate this entrepreneurial skill and basically face failure and learn strategic thinking, risk taking, because a career needs to be aligned with your unique vision of success. And so how are experts recommending to do that? Well, first of all, they recommend not to have a present focus because a present focus brings a present bias. So you're basically are on the top of a hill and you see the future being distant and past events that fade into the background. But instead, you should have a focus to the future with a bird's eye view in which time flattens out and all the moments, past, present, future, appear equally important. So a long life gives you more future to plan for. So you encourage patience, and through decision making, you allocate time today for future rewards. Very important. In the past, we mostly have this vertical trajectory. Again, vertical growth. We knew exactly when we were going to be promoted and why and how. And today, this is not happening any longer. Companies are no longer loyal. And we have seen this with very often mass layoffs. And at the same time, employees are also less loyal. So there is this trend of job hopping, especially in Gen Zers. They stay in a company 6 months and then they change and change and change. And we can open there a discussion of how important it is to stay to a level where you can leverage the expertise you have built for the next stage of your life. Because if you never get to a certain level of expertise, the risk is that you will not be growing at a later stage as much as you're expecting to. The opportunities that we have today are just massive. That a personal brand enables you to do exactly that, enables you to reinvent yourself more easily. However, there are difficulties. And this is, for example, coming whenever someone wants to create a career portfolio from one ideal jobs to many dream jobs, a multiple path. If you look at Leonardo da Vinci, he was an architect, artist, musician, mathematician, inventor, but also Schwarzenegger was a bodybuilder, actor, politician, businessman, Lady Gaga, opera, Winfrey. So there are many cases. And what's important to understand there, that to diversify the risk in a job market that is constantly changing, the easiest way is actually to start side activities. And we see that very often. If you go on LinkedIn, you will find in the title of individuals at least 2-3 things. The monothematic jobs, careers are no longer so interesting. So you are a marketing professor, you are a startup founder, you are a researcher, you are a consultant, you are a lecturer. So there are so many different things that you can be. And why is this happening? Well, substantially because the expectation is that we are more than just one job, that we are able to influence in different areas, in different communities, but also that there is a clear need from the employees that is coming from what's going to happen if overnight I lose my job. If I have a side activity, if I've been developing an interest, most likely I reduce the risk and I have better chances to find new opportunities.
How do you know what's relevant? I've also noticed that there are multiple things in which you should be sharing, which is your interest. And I think taking Mark Zuckerberg is quite a good example because I also don't particularly follow him, but I know, yeah, he is also this guy now that has long curly hair and has designer outfits and does jiu-jitsu. But I also wonder, he's so famous that it's several degrees of separation from someone like me, and I don't think necessarily that if I did jiu-jitsu, it would be valuable to my career if I posted about it on LinkedIn. So I wonder, how do you decide what's useful and what's not when you are trying to have this public brand?
Sure. There is always a certain element in the content you're creating and sharing that is core to your expertise and something that you can consider a stretch. There are also some topics that you might not want to get into. Think about politics. And so being authentic doesn't mean I share with you that I went to the gym and I did 20 push-ups. That's not necessarily relevant, as you said. What's relevant is what's within your brand territory. A brand territory is the intersection between what you can offer valuable to the world and what are people seeking for. So whether their interest, passions are somehow converging with yours. And before you become a recognized thought leader, you probably are better off focusing on be valuable and authentic and reducing the risk of bragging by staying in your core competence. And then you can try to, in some cases, to stretch. You can see many personal brands are evolving in this way. They are expert of, I don't know, finance or cryptocurrency or marketing. And then they, expand into more leadership related expert, where they're basically coming up with all sorts of advices and suggestions for everyone. This is a risk. It's clearly not always valuable, especially if you are starting off in developing your personal brand. And so I would always encourage to, at the beginning, focus on what's valuable for whom. And if the question is what's valuable, the answer is, well, you need to test it out. Nobody really knows. You have to experiment exactly as you did. So you did 20 podcasts. Perhaps this will be the least listened to, and then you will decide the next time you don't invite me or you don't invite anyone from marketing and focus more on finance. And this is how you evolve. You are basically need to find what I call the person market fit. So as a personal brand, you need to find your fit in the market. And very often we forget about the market. And that's why I think having a very deep external view of what are the trends, what are people seeking for, is extremely important to help you out delivering the value you can deliver.
Is there any risk or when putting out your brand as more than just your current job? Is there a risk that this signals to people, recruiters or people looking for positions to fill, that you're not as qualified or suitable to the thing they're looking for as someone who only does that one thing? So I used to be a consultant, then now I work in software implementation, I am a podcast host. Is there a risk that they look at that and go, well, he splits his time across 3 different things. I want him for one thing. I'm going to find someone that only does that one thing.
Yes. I mean, of course, experts are in the need, and you have to display with all the traits you are a leader in that area. If then you do, if you are a yoga teacher on the side, this might be less relevant for the sake of the job. So definitely, one of the biggest issues is that we have a work identity, even if we don't necessarily identify with our work. Not always. This society sees us as the marketeer or the finance director, or so basically the role, the job is predominant in defining who we are. And when you have a career portfolio with equally important possible roles, the risk is that you have difficulty yourself in defining who you truly are and where the different job had value and can create synergy. Herminia Ibarra is a professor at London Business School, and she's clearly studied working identity since 20 years and more. And what she's basically telling is that it's very difficult to actually switch from one identity to another. It's usually requiring a transition period in which we, first of all, convince ourselves that we are expert in that area. So we pass this imposter syndrome and show that we have an expertise. And so it is a convincing act, first of all, of ourselves and then of others, that eventually we are suitable for that job opportunity. Now, I think more and more people will develop a career portfolio also because we will not be working necessarily for 40 years. We will be working for full 50, maybe 60. Consider the newest generation. 50% of the newborn in a developed world will be living above 100 years old. And so basically means that the retirement plan is not going to be as smooth as originally anticipated. Probably they will have to work longer. The retirement is postponed. And as a consequence, they will have the chance to experience more things. So I think in general, recruiters mostly are becoming more open to it. So I had discussions with a company recruiter at On, the sportwear company. And when they are reviewing CVs now, they're also looking at what is behind the person in terms of, is this person passionate about women's in tech? Is this person interested in diversity and inclusion? Is this person into climate change? So there are so many different ways of actually helping a recruiter experiencing who you really are behind your main role in the society. And I think there will be more and more attention to that because you want an individual to be a good fit with the corporate culture, and you want this person to contribute just beyond the daily work, which basically might mean, well, you're going to work even more and not necessarily in a technical job. But I see big advantages there because you have to express who you are and be able to articulate it in an effective way. And so your identity will be shifting from just working identity to also who are you in your private life. And so I'm kind of optimistic for that. So I see that be positioned on multiple paths is more rewarding for the individual, but it might also be attractive for an employer that actually wants to go beyond just the technical skill of an employee.
That makes sense. Where is a starting point? So I understand you have to just put some things out there and get some feedback and see how it goes. But if I'm someone who's been, like you said, in that position where you're working in one career and you think, okay, I have to branch out, I need to build my portfolio, I want to create this image, I don't know how to do that. I don't have the skill set to write about who I am in a way which may seem attractive to other people. Besides taking a course in marketing and personal branding, are there things you can recommend to people to get themselves started to learn about how to do this properly?
That's a very good question. It's a very tough question actually to answer because, as we said, the process is sort of defined, but a lot depends on how well do you know yourself. So your self-awareness, it depends on, are you really aiming to leave behind a purpose? And there is a huge difference between living your purpose and following your passion, right? That's so important because purpose is about a commitment to do something bigger than yourself is what can I give to the world? So an outward impact. Whereas if you're just focusing on doing something that represents your passion, that keeps you on the flow, then it's an inward impact that you're seeking. So what can the world give me? And so the biggest question there is, do you know what your why is? And very often a why, a purpose, life motive comes from a struggle, a crusade, something that happened to you that can justify what's your next step. I'll give you an example. I recently lost my grandfather. He passed away with dementia and living in a nursing home. And despite the entire family was very much supportive of his situation, you cannot necessarily be on the phone and present all the time. And so when your startup builds on a gap identified in this process, so there will be more and more senior feeling lonely, at risk of dementia because they are not cognitively stimulated enough. And human support only goes as far. And so with my expertise in AI and AI empathy, I just decided to work on a new startup that is actually helping people, seniors, to stay independent by providing an empathic AI companion that is also supportive of stimulation of their cognitive abilities. So if you ask me what my why is, it's very clear, it's very simple. The problem is when you're not basing your work, your life decision on things that you find relevant, meaningful, this is where there is a disconnect. And of course, for individuals, it's very difficult to convince themselves that what they are doing is meaningful. That meaningful is the foundation of all this process. So the idea of having a personal brand and gaining flexibility and going after opportunity is only driven by the fact that by doing so, you will be living a more fulfilling, meaningful life because you can live on your purpose.
It sounds like, and I think is what you said also, your first of your 3 steps is reflection, and a big part of that is introspection and figuring out what it is this thing is that you want to do. If you watch TED Talks, if you watch inspirational speakers, they make it seem so easy. But for most of us, myself included, it's a really hard thing to find. And I guess how I found it was join some dots. So I enjoy listening to podcasts, but often I got frustrated because they're in English and the topics, politics, about economy, whatever, it's always the US based, it's about the UK based, and there was nothing specific to where I lived. I was like, okay. And I couldn't find anything in English on that topic. So I thought, right, there is a problem that should be solved. That I moved here 5 years ago, and I thought, I don't know anybody outside of this very specific narrow field that I'm in. I need to find a way to meet more people. And I also am just a very curious person. I like asking questions, but nothing specific, just on a broad range of things. And I put those 3 together and I thought, I have to start a podcast. But that was also months and months of trying to figure it out. It wasn't something that just came to me in a dream. So I guess it does take a lot of time, and not just something that you know. I think that's something that the TED Talkers often skip over. Isn't something you just innately know. You have to figure it out.
Exactly. So yours was really a need. So like many podcasters, it's just a genuine intention to share with others, to connect. And this is beautiful. So that's exactly what it is. You are not forced to do it. Nobody's paying to do it, but still you're using your evenings and weekends to edit and share. And that's what makes me believe that you are really doing the right thing. And of course, you have different moments in life in which you are full-time corporate manager. Other times you are in a transition and you might invest more time perhaps on developing your personal brand and an initiative. But this will stay with you if you are nurturing this as your vehicle. So you are developing a personal brand, and your way, your mean to do so is your podcast. In the future, when podcasts will not be popular any longer, you will probably shift to something else. But the feeling I'm getting talking to you is that you will not lose the enthusiasm for sharing. You will not lose your curiosity. And as a consequence, there is a massive opportunity for you to develop personally as a leader and also your potential impact on others.
Well, Alex, for the next podcasting milestone, I think it's episode 100 I have to strive towards now. So 101, I'll get you back on and we can take a look at where we're at.
That's great.
Alex, to wrap up, I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you're working on that's interesting that you wish to share with people? Or if people wish to find you, how should they do so?
Of course, they can always connect on LinkedIn, Alex Mari. And as I said, I'm launching this a new project, an empathic voice assistant called Carry Ally. Carry because of caring, and ally because it's your partner in caring. And we will see how it goes. I'm very enthusiastic about it. And as I said, these projects are born without any economic return in mind. But if there is a chance to be fully committed to something that comes natural to you, then I might be fully dedicated to that. In the meantime, I'm teaching in different universities in Milan and Zurich. I would love to stay in contact with any listener. If you're interested in developing talents, then definitely we need to connect. Hopefully, I will be sharing more of what I'm working on in this area. So far, it was only at the university level, but I'm also planning to build my personal brand at some point.
Well, I was looking for a personal branding expert, and you're the person I found. So you must be doing something right.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm glad to hear.
Alex, thank you very much for this conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you did enjoy the episode and you want to support me, it would mean a lot if you could rate the episode and follow the podcast on your favorite platform. It really helps the show grow and reach more people. I'll see you in the next episode.